He was born in a small, dark cabin, yet his heart was full of dreams and courage. His life was filled with hardships, loss, and struggles. But he never gave up. He had nothing, and yet one day he would change the world forever. This is the story of Abraham Lincoln, the man who rose from nothing to become one of the greatest leaders in history. Abraham Lincoln, also known as Honest Abe, was born on February 12, 1809, in a small log cabin in Hodgenville, Kentucky, USA. His family was very poor, and the cabin had only one room where the whole family ate, slept, and lived together. Abraham was the second child of Thomas and Nancy Lincoln, and life was hard from the very beginning. At that time, there were no schools nearby. Children had to walk long distances to learn, and most families could not afford books. But Abraham loved to read. He would borrow books from neighbors, sometimes walking miles to get them. Even after a long day working on the farm, he read by candlelight, often for hours. Abraham's early life was full of hard work. He had to chop wood, plow the fields, split logs, and help build fences. Despite the difficult labor, Abraham's mind was always curious and hungry for knowledge. He loved history, poetry, and stories of great leaders. When Abraham was only 9 years old, tragedy struck. His mother, Nancy Lincoln, died of milk sickness, a disease caused by drinking milk from cows that had eaten poisonous plants. Abraham was heartbroken, and the loss left a deep sadness in his young heart. A few years later, his father remarried. Abraham's stepmother, Sarah Bush Johnston, was kind and loving. She treated Abraham with care and respect and encouraged his love for learning. She even brought books into their home and gave him the chance to study and read more. Slowly, Abraham began to bond with his stepmother, and she became one of the most important figures in his life. Even as a child, Abraham was known for his honesty and curiosity. He was sometimes teased by other children for being so tall and thin and for reading instead of playing, but he never let that stop him. He often said, "Whatever you are, be a good one." Abraham grew up moving a lot, as his family had to search for better land and work opportunities. Life was unstable, but Abraham learned to adapt, work hard, and stay focused. In his teenage years, Abraham became known in his community as strong, responsible, and very intelligent. He loved telling stories, reciting poetry, and debating ideas with friends. Even though he had very little formal education, he taught himself many subjects, including math, law, and history. When Abraham was around 22 years old, he moved to New Salem, Illinois, a small village, to work at a general store. His job included selling goods, keeping accounts, helping customers, and delivering supplies. This work taught him business skills, responsibility, and problem solving, which helped him later in law and politics. In New Salem, Abraham met a young woman named Anne Rutledge. Anne was kind, caring, and beautiful, and she and Abraham became very close friends. Many people believed that they were in love. Abraham wrote poems about her and spoke about his dreams of a future together. But in 1835, Anne fell seriously ill and tragically died. Abraham was devastated. Losing someone he loved so much was another great challenge in his life. Even with these hardships, Abraham learned an important lesson. Life is hard, but we must keep going and never give up. He often said, "I will prepare, and someday my chance will come." After the sad loss of Anne Rutledge, Abraham Lincoln decided to focus on building his life and career. Even though life had been very hard, he never gave up. He believed in working hard and preparing for the future. As he once said, "I am a slow walker, but I never walk back." During his time in New Salem, Abraham also became interested in politics. He was curious about how the government worked, how laws were made, and how he could help ordinary people. He began reading books about the law, the Constitution, and famous leaders. Even though he had no formal education in law, Abraham decided to study law on his own. He spent long hours reading law books, taking notes, and practicing arguments in front of a mirror. He also learned from local lawyers in New Salem and other towns. In 1832, at the age of 23, Abraham Lincoln decided to run for the Illinois state legislature as a member of the Whig Party. He believed that he could make a difference for the people, even though he had little money and very few supporters. Unfortunately, he lost the election. But instead of giving up, Abraham learned an important lesson. Failure is not the end. It is a chance to learn and grow. He said later, "My great concern is not whether you have failed, but whether you are content with your failure." After the election, Abraham focused on becoming a lawyer. He continued his studies, reading law books every day, sometimes until midnight. In 1836, at the age of 27, he passed the bar exam and became a licensed lawyer. Abraham moved to Springfield, Illinois to practice law. Here he became very successful, known for honesty, fairness, and skill. People from all walks of life came to him for help. He never accepted unfair cases or cheated anyone. His dedication to justice and fairness made him very popular in Springfield. While working as a lawyer, Abraham continued to think about politics. He realized that making laws and leading the country was the best way to help people and fight injustice. In 1834, at the age of 25, Abraham Lincoln was elected to the Illinois state legislature as a member of the Whig Party. This was his first big step into politics. Lincoln didn't just attend meetings and follow orders. He spoke out about issues that affected people's daily lives, including education, roads, banks, and slavery. Even though he was young and not famous, people noticed his honesty, intelligence, and courage. He often said, "Whatever you are, be a good one." During his time in the legislature, Lincoln realized that slavery was the biggest problem in the country. Many politicians avoided the topic because it was dangerous and unpopular, but Lincoln spoke openly about freedom and justice. He believed that a country cannot survive divided by slavery. In 1836, at 27 years old, Abraham ran for the U.S. Congress. He wanted to fight against slavery on a bigger stage, but the campaign was tough and he lost the election. Instead of feeling defeated, Abraham saw this as another step in learning and growing. He said, "The best way to predict your future is to create it." He returned to his law practice, helping people, building a reputation as an honest and fair lawyer, and preparing for the next opportunity in politics. While practicing law in Springfield, Lincoln lived a simple life. He was tall, wore simple clothes, and had no fancy possessions. He rode horseback to court, walked long distances, and often worked late into the night studying cases. Lincoln also became involved in the community. He volunteered for local projects, helped improve roads, and spoke at public meetings about education and the law. People respected him not only for his skills, but also for his kindness, fairness, and humility. In 1858, Abraham Lincoln was well known in Illinois for his work as a lawyer and politician. That year, he ran for the U.S. Senate, challenging Stephen A. Douglas, a powerful and experienced politician. This campaign included famous debates, now called the Lincoln-Douglas debates. They discussed many issues, but the main focus was slavery. Lincoln clearly said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." This meant that the country could not continue half slave and half free. It had to choose a side. Lincoln spoke powerfully and respectfully, explaining that slavery was wrong and harmful to the whole nation. Although Lincoln lost the Senate race, his speeches made him famous across the country. People saw him as honest, brave, and a leader who stood for what is right. After the famous Lincoln-Douglas debates in 1858, Abraham Lincoln became a well-known leader in the country. People admired his honesty, intelligence, and courage. He was not yet president, but he was ready for bigger responsibilities. The United States was divided over slavery. The southern states wanted to keep slavery, while the northern states wanted to stop its spread. Many people feared that the country might break apart. Abraham Lincoln believed in freedom and equality. He said, "Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves." The Republican Party saw him as the right person to lead the nation during this difficult time. In 1860, they asked him to run for president. The election was very tense. Lincoln had strong support in the North, but almost no support in the South. Many Southern leaders were afraid that if Lincoln became president, slavery would end and their economy would collapse. On November 6, 1860, Abraham Lincoln won the presidential election. He became the 16th president of the United States. However, the victory caused a crisis. 7 southern states refused to accept Lincoln as president, They decided to leave the Union and formed a new country called the Confederate States of America. The nation was now on the brink of war. In April 1861, the Civil War began when Confederate forces attacked Fort Sumter in South Carolina. Lincoln faced a huge challenge. He had to preserve the Union while avoiding unnecessary bloodshed. The war was brutal. Thousands of soldiers died on both sides. Lincoln had to make difficult decisions, including how to lead the army, choose generals, and manage resources. He worked long hours at the White House, reading reports, writing letters, and planning military strategy. Despite the pressure, Lincoln stayed calm, focused, and determined. He often reminded himself and others that, "I am not bound to win, but I am bound to be true. I am not bound to succeed, but I am bound to live by the light that I have." Life for Lincoln was not only hard politically, but also personally. In 1862, his beloved son Willie, aged 11, died of illness. This was a devastating blow to Abraham and his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln. Despite his grief, Lincoln continued to lead the country. People noticed that his personal sorrow made him more compassionate and understanding. He always remembered the importance of family and love, even while facing the stress of war. Lincoln strongly believed that ending slavery was necessary for the nation to heal. On January 1, 1863, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation. This bold order declared that all enslaved people in Confederate states were free. This was a turning point in history. Lincoln knew it was risky. Many people, even in the North, did not support immediate freedom for slaves. But Lincoln said, "If slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong." The Emancipation Proclamation changed the purpose of the war. Now the Union was not just fighting to save the country, but also to end slavery and fight for human freedom. In November 1863, after the Battle of Gettysburg, Lincoln gave one of the most famous speeches in history. It lasted only about 2 minutes, but its message was powerful. He said that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. The speech reminded Americans that the war was not just about land or politics. It was about freedom, equality, and the future of the nation. People still remember these words today because they capture the spirit of Lincoln's leadership. As president, Lincoln was also commander-in-chief of the army. At first, he struggled to find good generals. Some were cautious or slow. He needed a leader who was bold and decisive. After several failures, he found General Ulysses S. Grant. Grant was brave, determined, and willing to fight until the end. Under Grant, the Union Army began winning key battles, such as Vicksburg and Chattanooga. In 1864, it was clear that the Union could win the war. Lincoln's leadership and faith in his generals helped the country move toward victory. In April 1865, the Confederate Army finally surrendered. The war was over. The Union was saved. Slavery was ending. Lincoln's dream was becoming real. But just days later, tragedy struck. On April 14, 1865, Abraham Lincoln went to a play at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. While he was watching the show, he was shot by a man named John Wilkes Booth. Lincoln was taken to a nearby house, where he died the next morning. The nation was in shock. People cried in the streets. The man who had led them through their darkest days was gone. But Lincoln's story did not end with his death. His ideas lived on. Before he died, Lincoln helped pass the 13th Amendment, which officially ended slavery in the United States. His leadership planted the seeds for future movements for civil rights, justice, and equality. Today, Abraham Lincoln is remembered as one of the greatest leaders in history. His face is on notes. His words are in books. His statue stands in the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., where people from all over the world come to honor his legacy. Abraham Lincoln showed us that greatness is not about power, it is about purpose. And that is why his story still inspires millions of people today. But Lincoln's story doesn't end with history, it continues with us. Because every one of us faces hardship. Every one of us feels small at times. And every one of us has a choice to stop or to rise. Lincoln chose to rise. He showed us that failure is not the end, that courage grows in dark places, and that one honest heart can change the world. So as you think about Lincoln's journey, think about your own. What will you do when life tests you? Will you walk back or keep moving forward? If this story inspired you, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more stories.